All right. So I want to talk to you about this continuum. And fear and trust go hand in hand. You can never have one without the other. And you can never have failure without innovation. Just like you can never have dark without light, north without south, left without right, like all of that stuff, right? They are all there. And I want you guys to really think about this, because as a leader, the more you reduce fear and the more you reduce people's fear of failure, the more innovation and trust you will create. Can you guys see my little arrow cursor? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Hopefully you can, because I'm going to try to demonstrate something for you. Yes. Okay, good. So think about this. You know, you always have both. So say someone's working for you and they're in a ton of fear. And so their fear may be up here, really high, which means they only have space for just a little bit of innovation, right? Maybe their fear is right here in the middle, and you can help them kind of maybe reduce that fear a tiny bit. What if you created a work environment where people were okay with failure, that they were proud of failure, they were proud of learning, that they lived in a place where they were able to expand their experiences and their mind maps without getting in trouble? And say your fear factor, remember that show, Fear Factor? Maybe your fear factor is down here. Wouldn't that be incredible if it was down here? Because then you have all this space for innovation. Wherever someone's failure or fear is, because that's the strong piece of it, right? That's your primitive brain. Wherever your fear and failure is, what's left over is a space for innovation. You've got to reduce the fear. Okay, so that's a lot to think about. Any thoughts, put them in the chat. Any time that you've thought about how you were in total fear and couldn't figure out how to start a project. Anytime that you were like, no matter what, it's going to be okay. So I'm just going to go do this, right? You've probably felt that in yourself. Where do you feel like your team is in this failure continuum? Are they closer to fear and failure and they've got a ton of that? Or are they near trust and innovation? Let us know in the chat box where they're at. And as you do that, I'm going to tell you a story, real life story from a coaching session with an executive yesterday. It was a vice president. And she was telling me a story about something that she had to deal with. And there was someone on her team and she's like, I had to ask him 4 times to do it, 4 times. I'm like, okay, tell me about his response the first time you asked. She's like, he said he was too busy. He was this, he was that. And I'm like, okay, tell me about the second time you ask. Well, he just said he didn't know really where to start and he didn't know who could help him. I'm like, okay, tell me about the third time you ask. Oh, the third time I asked, he was kind of on the fence. Like he was like, I could probably do this. I could maybe move this around. I could maybe do this or that. I'm like, okay, so then the fourth time when he finally said yes, tell me about that conversation. And she said, well, in that conversation, I removed a project because I recognized it was getting in his way. He didn't have the time. And then I assigned him someone else, this other person, to help teach him this piece of code so that he could get it done. And I'm like, and after that, she goes, oh, he said yes, but it took me 4 times. It didn't take her 4 times because the person didn't want to do it. It took her 4 times because she couldn't see the fear in that person and help them reduce fear. And so she was upset because they didn't want to do the work, which creates more fear. What was happening is that person was in fear and needed help to get past it, to get started. All right. So I tell that story, so real life, from yesterday. Has that happened to you? Have you looked at someone and you've thought, I've asked them 10 times to do this. Why aren't they doing it? And then you step in and kind of help a little bit and it takes off. Has that ever happened to you as a leader? If so, drop a little yes in the chat box if that story resonates with you. Oh, yeah, right. How many times have we done that? And it's really us not listening.